Crikey, wowzers trousers, look at all these ozones, ozone 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, iZotope Ozone is a bit of software available for mastering electronic music, well, no, not even just electronic, all kinds of music and audio. It's mastering software and it's by far the most popular. As you can see here, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's clearly the one I use. I mean, I've tried them all and this is by far the best. And it's also the most popular. It's the most popular for a reason. And so chances are you may have one, ozone 5, 6, 7, or 8, either standard or advanced. And so how would you measure loudness? Is my track quiet or loud? It's kind of a hidden feature. It's in the settings. Is that hidden? I don't know. Go to settings, boink. Remember, you can do that. I'll show you in a few here. So we're in ozone 8 right now. Settings, input and output, boink, me to type, click, and you can see here these three: momentary, short-term, and integrated. These refer to LUFS, loudness units full. Is it loudness units full scale? I'm pretty sure it's loudness units full scale. Basically, to measure loudness, how loud we as human beings hear music or any kind of audio, we don't want to use RMS. That's a mistake. We want to use something called LUFS, and that's what these three here are: momentary LUFS, short-term LUFS, and integrated LUFS. Now, boink, look at that. That gives you more information, but I memorized it because I'm a person who knows these things. So momentary is the loudness over, is it 0.4 seconds, so 400 milliseconds. So how loud it is for a brief moment, momentary in time. Short-term is loudness over 3 seconds, short-term, and integrated is loudness over the entire track. Remember, from mathematics, the integrated is the area below, so if you take loudness over an indefinite amount of time, all of this here. Therefore, what you can do is say measure loudness, normally for one of these two, short-term or integrated. I personally do short-term, at least as my standard. Therefore, you can see it over there, LUFS. Loudness, LUFS, loudness units, full scale. Loudness. And so you can measure, say, your favorite tracks. In fact, you need to do this first of all. Take 10 to 25 to 30, or maybe even more, but let's go for 20, 15. We'll go for 15. Take 15 of your favorite tracks in your style of music you create, or not even just music, but any audio in the style of audio you're creating. Take that, measure them, see where the LUFS is, the loudness for that style of thing. And what you'll find is there's a sort of it's like a range almost of loudnesses for that type of thing you're creating. And so do this for, as I say, 15 or so tracks. I've personally done it for, over the years, I've measured 700 to 800 tracks for loudness. Probably more if you factor in DJing, because you see the loudness there too. Simply because I'm involved in all the genres, you don't need to do that many. Just pick the genres you create, the style of audio, get a feeling for where that LUFS should be, and therefore when you're producing, you can get a feeling for it too. Get a sense of if your track is about right or not. Remember, you don't want to be too loud, you don't want to be too quiet. Somewhere in the middle, or somewhere towards the lower half of the range technically, but either way, there'll be a rough sort of range so you can see if your track is close enough. Loudness, that's basically how you measure it. Now, the reason why I have all these different ozones up is each version labels it differently, which I've no idea why, but it does. For example, ozone 5, the classic, go to options. On ozone 8, you have to click a little cog for settings, or I suppose options. They changed it. It was options before. So you type, so input outputs, well, I was already on it. Look at that, crikey. Type, and then go to, we've actually given you some more clues here, but it's still cryptic. It's cryptic, but in a different way. That's the fun music production. LUFSM for momentary. I'm on the screen now for more clues as to what the momentary, short-term, and integrated means. So LUFSM for momentary, LUFSS for short-term loudness, momentary loudness, short-term loudness, and I for integrated. I can see why, unless you've read the manual and or are really into these nerdy details like me, you wouldn't know what all this means. But it's built in, and remember, it's more important than RMS. RMS is a measure, really loosely speaking, of average level. It's a really technical physics definition, which is extremely unhelpful, in fact, but it's kind of like how thick the track is. That's another way of looking at it. But either way, RMS is almost never the right thing to measure, because it basically doesn't factor in different frequencies. It's a bit stupid, actually. One way of looking at it, for any particular reason you might be measuring, say anything, there'll be a better meter, than RMS. I don't know why Ableton and all these ones default to RMS. It's probably just a hangover from the olden days before they had better meters. I mean, even if you have a very limited input, like in the case, even dynamic range, there's a better way to measure it using the, is it the crest factor? Something like the crest. There's ways to measure dynamic range that are much better than the difference between peak and RMS. I mean, crudely speaking, the difference between peak and RMS could be considered dynamic range. But as I say, things like the crest factor, or I think it is crest factor, there are basically other ways to measure even dynamic range. So yeah, ain't nobody got time for RMS. What we do got time for is LUFS. Boink, let's see what the buttons look like in Ozone 7. Momentary, short-term and integrated, so that's the same as Ozone 8. Let's try Ozone 6 just to double check. Always good idea to double check. Oh, you can see this was the crossover point in time. There you go. This is some obscure and pointless knowledge to go alongside my useful knowledge. So in Ozone 5, options was written out options. In Ozone 6, they introduced the cog. So options with cog. Now that's I've got tool tips on. I don't want tool tips. I only need tips about the tools. Okay. So you can see here, options is now written out, but they've included the cog. And therefore, when it went to Ozone 7, they thought, ain't nobody got time for words. We've trained up our users to associate options with a cog. So they got rid of that. Anyway, what was a jibber? That's jibber jabber that. Right, it's back to inputs and outputs for Ozone 6. They say, yeah, momentary, short-term, and integrated. For LUFS, loudness. Loud. I'm talking very loud. Brilliant. So there you go. That is how to measure loudness using Ozone. Now, somewhat ironically, I don't actually measure loudness using Ozone. I mean, I do keep my eye on it. I mean, when I'm doing it's the maximizer stage. Most the other sections influence loudness. But yes, it is the maximizer that is predominantly responsible for loudness. So I do keep my eye on the right-hand side on well, not in that case. I basically reset it to default for this video. Normally, as I say, I have the short-term LUFS configured, so short-term LUFS. So I keep my eye on it as I'm doing the limiting. I mean, it's more of something I check afterwards, to be completely honest. I kind of have my eye on it, but normally measure it afterwards. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, I don't actually use this to measure loudness. I use iZotope Insight. Is that the name of it? I think it is. Or Insight 2. I lose track of all the numbers. Numbers can be difficult. There are so many of them. Insight, there you go. Yeah, it's just Insight. So I actually use this to measure. You can make it bigger. That's what she said. I use this to measure loudness, but I won't get into it now because this is a video about Ozone. But the cool thing about this is it shows you momentary, integrated, and short term, and loudness range, which is, I suppose, not dynamic range, but I mean it's. Depends how you define dynamic range. It's not a well-defined thing, strictly speaking. Anyway, it tells you all of this all at once, and more importantly, the reason why I use Insight, so use Insight instead if you have it, is you can measure. So you have multiple screens. You can look at this at the same time as your ozoning. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. So the cool thing about this is the loudness history. Here's a picture of a loudness history of a track to save me doing it live on the fly, freestyle. So the cool thing about the loudness history is you can see how the short term, I think it's the short term, it is the short term, or momentary, basically the loudness at any moment in time, loosely speaking, you can see how the words multiplier. So the cool thing about loudness history is you can see how loudness changes over time. On a short-term or momentary basis, you can basically see how loudness changes over time, and also how it correlates to the integrated loudness, which is one of the main deciding factors in loudness management, for example. Anyway, what I'm basically trying to say is instead of just keeping your eye on a meter and seeing it going up and down, which is the case in Ozone, the cool thing about Insight is you can see how that changes over time in a graphical way, which is cool. Very, very cool indeed. And if you're serious about mastering, you do need to be measuring this stuff, words. You do need to be measuring things in a very scientific way. Yes, there's an element of art to mastering, but compared to pretty much everyone, in fact, yeah, compared to the music production is mostly art, but mastering is mostly science. That's the way to look at it. And there you go, people. That is it. That is how to measure loudness using iZotope Ozone. My name has been Multiplier. It still is Multiplier. It will continue to be Multiplier forever and until the end of time, which will the end of time happen? Because time started. But will time end? We will see in due time whether time ends or not. My name's been Multiplier. I will catch you guys on the flippity flip. This video is sponsored by me, my website. As you can see here, I have a whole range of things available, from serum presets through to serum tools, samples, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Do check it out, link below, multipliermusic.com, and or subscribe. Thanks for watching.